My name's Jade. I'm from the Cree Nation in Edmonton, Alberta. I'm the oldest of four. I was taken into ministry care when I was around 7 or 8, and I went through a whole series of schools and orphanages and foster homes until I was about 17. I spent a lot of my life in jail and in institutions. And that's and I'm just actually still on parole right now for another 3 months until July.
Great. So you were born in Edmonton then?
I was born in Edmonton, yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what life was like growing up, family life, and just what you like?
Well, I was taken by the ministry when I was young, so I never really had a context of a family life. It was all institutions and foster homes, orphanages, places like that.
So what do you know or about your parents or remember about your parents, in particular in terms of residential school?
Well, I know that I've just recently come into contact with my mother like 30 years later, and I've been actually talking to her, so there's not a whole lot of information I have about her at this point. I do know, however, that my family was part of residential school, my grandmother and my mother, stuff like that. So, you know, I've done a lot of studying on the subject as well. So,
what was your understanding of the reason you were taken when you were 7?
Well, it was due to my parents' inability to care for us, is kind of what it came down to. They were alcoholics. There was abuse. And then when I went into foster care, you know, that stuff didn't stop. In the late 70s and early 80s, the ministry wasn't as regulated as it is now. So it was just kind of, a lot of people took us in just for the paycheck. Right, so.
Were you together with your
No.
siblings?
No, they separated. As both my brothers and my sister suffer from variation of forms of FAS, various severities of it. So, like my brother and my sister were both institutionalized in hospitals. My brother can't care for himself. He has to live with a family. So.
Right. And then, can you talk a bit about what life was like for you after you were 17 then?
Well, by that time I'd already started doing jail time. I'd already started acting out with a lot of behavioral problems, committing crimes. I'd already been introduced to gang life at that point, and I had already done most of my life at that point in jail, and that had continued up actually until just recently, within the last few years, that I've kind of snapped out of it and started getting in touch with my spirituality and my culture.
And you're here in Prince George now, and I know you're doing some work in the community. What kind of work are you doing in the community?
Well, right now in the community, I work with an elder, and I participate in sweats and help run sweat lodges, talking circles. I've actually just recently started speaking to youth, kind of about my experiences and wrong choices in life, drugs, alcohol, what they can do, and it's kind of my way of giving back for what I've done to help out maybe somebody else so they don't make the same mistakes.
And is violence within the community that you live, is it a concern to you?
Absolutely. I think violence, not only in the community where I live here in Prince George, but back home is quite extensive, and it seems to be getting worse more amongst youth. And I think a lot of that has to do with just misplacement of themselves. They don't know where they are and what they're doing, and lack of structure, and they end up acting out because they don't have parents there to help them, and they have drug and alcohol issues, and a lot of them lost connections to their culture amongst Aboriginal people, and I think that has a huge impact on kind of what's happening, and they're angry and they don't know what to do with it, and they in turn turn it on themselves and turn it on the people around them.
And you
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's basically what I did. I had nowhere to place my anger towards everything, and yeah, I acted out, and I put that anger and that violence on not only myself but everybody that I came into contact with. So.
So who do you think is affected by the violence?
Well, I think everybody absolutely is affected by the violence. I think everybody, not just Aboriginal people in general, but I think a community as a whole is affected by it, because within a community, if there's a lot of violence and people don't let their children go out, they don't feel safe walking to the store because they think they're going to get mugged or robbed. And so I think everybody is affected by it. Absolutely.
Are families experiencing violence in more than one generation?
Yeah, I think they are. I think the reason being is that if a parent grew up with violence, they in turn impart that on their children, and then their children impart it on not only their children but the people around them, and it's a continuing cycle, and until somebody steps in and helps, it's gonna keep continuing, and it just gets worse as it goes along.
Why do you think that intergenerational violence is there? What's behind? Where did it come from?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with anger issues on just, and I can only speak from my point of view. I don't speak for anybody else, but I think a lot of it has to do with just, anger of not being around parents, or not having structure, not having somebody to care for you, and not showing you that other side, and that the only acceptable thing to have for emotions, is particularly as men, is either being happy or angry. You're not allowed to experience anything else. So you impart that on the people around you, and particularly your children. And then they grow up and they end up doing the same thing as the parents do. So
you've mentioned missing parents, and I imagine you also meet grandparents a couple times. Why are they missing? What's happened?
Well, I think in part residential school had a huge part in that, because as Native people, we grew up and our culture is based around family. And we weren't raised by just our parents, we were raised by an entire community, uncles and aunts and stuff, and they all imparted different parts of our upbringing and our values into us. And residential school took that away, and these people, they grew up very angry. A lot of them were abused, and then when they had children, they didn't have the parenting skills to impart on their children. So a lot of the parents were lost, for lack of a better word, and they imparted that onto their children. And then their children, when they had children, didn't know how to be parents either. And it's another cycle, it's a circle, and it'll just keep going on until somebody steps up and starts helping out some of these people and participating. People can help themselves, participating in parenting classes and stuff like that.
So you're at right now you're at the last part, which is, and you've mentioned some things, but what do you think can be done to break the cycle of multi-general abuse?
I think that the most important thing for me personally that will help break the cycle is being reconnected with our culture, and with our community, with our elders and stuff like that. The culture can really help, and although it's not a cure-all, and it doesn't, you don't go to a ceremony and you're instantly healed and everything's better, but it imparts a sense of discipline into a person, and I think that can help them and people open their minds to get at the other help that they need from other sources within their community or on their reses. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the hugest part. And with that comes education and doing the other stuff, taking parenting classes, and just basically reconnecting with the people in their community, trying to do good work. And by helping others, you can help yourself.
So are you a parent?
I am actually a parent, yes. And like I said, I went through that thing. I haven't seen my son for 15 years. And I just recently started talking to him online and stuff too. So as I get better in my space, the people around me are starting to come back, like my mother and my son and stuff. So, but I really hope that I didn't damage him the way that my parents, had a part in damaging me, and that their parents had a part in them. In part by doing the work that I'm starting to do now, I hope I can make a difference with that.
Anything else that you think you might want to add or mention?
I just think like a strong connection to culture and a strong connection to formal education is a key role in helping people. If we need to change a system, we have to change it from within, and the only way to do that is to get education. And with that, keeping in touch with our traditional culture. Doesn't mean we have to go live in teepees or anything, but keeping to those core values that our people have, and that a lot of our elders still remember, and that they, working with an elder is probably one of the best things I've ever done in my life. So.
What do you think those core values are, from what you've learned?
I think it's just a strong sense of community, a strong sense of family. Learning stuff like how to participate and have discipline in whatever it is you're doing. It doesn't have to be a ceremony or anything, but having a discipline and being able to stay in school, or not, succumb to peer pressure to go drink and do drugs or do crime. And I think that comes from traditional values.